Okay, who else wanna introduce himself? Anyone else? Julie, Amit?
Hi, I'm Yet. We were supposed to give our name and what else?
Where are you calling from, and which industry are you currently working within?
I'm Yet. I'm in Chicago. Currently an entrepreneur, so I do a bunch of different things and have different hats. But I hang out in the tech industry, doing tech services, and in hair industry and beauty industry.
Okay, anyone else want to jump right in? Tony? Or anyone? Okay, if not, maybe I'll start by introducing myself. Let me share my screen and let me know if you're able, when you're able to see my screen. Give me a second. Can you see my screen right now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, let me admit a couple more folks. Okay, so let me start introducing myself. Okay, just want to make sure everyone is here. Okay. Yeah, so my name is Yasmin Taher, and I am a lead product manager at Amazon. I work within the advertisement space or digital marketing and advertising space, and have been within the same space over the last 5 years. Before Amazon, I also worked for multiple different companies. I worked for MasterCard for a couple of years in the same space, and I also worked for mid-sized organizations in healthcare for 5 years. And early on in my journey, I worked with 7 different startups building a bunch of products. I started my journey as an engineer and transitioned into product management over the last 6-7 years, and have been, in the tech industry for almost 15 years so far. I have a bachelor degree in computer science as well as a master's in business management. Today we're going to be discussing a couple subjects around in product management, very critical in product management. I usually like to introduce product management in general as product management. You can bucket it into 3 buckets or categories per se. The first one is the problem space, and this is when you do the user research, customer discovery, everything to do to better understand the problem that you want to solve for your customers. And the second one is the build phase or the solution space, which is more focused on building a product. So how would you define what needs to be built, and how are you going to validate everything that you need to build, and what is the framework that you're going to utilize to go through the build cycle. And the third phase for me is usually launching a product, the launch phase, and this is when you plan your go-to-market activities, you do all the measurement to make sure that your launch is successful and meeting expectation. We can't cover everything within 1 hour, so I'm going to focus most of my time on the second phase, which is the build cycle or the solution space, to help you better understand if you're coming from a technical background, engineering, design, or for non-tech people as well in different industries, how would you build a digital product? So I will make you more familiar with a lot of the processes and methodologies that you use in order to build a product. And feel free to stop me anytime if you want, if you have any questions or you need further clarification. Okay. Okay, so the second part here, I also, by the way, teach at different places. I teach at Princeton University of UBC University here in Canada. So this is why, you might see here the course branded with the university, but I am the curriculum owner. So I'm going to discuss here the first one, building a product. Um, Sometimes building a product is really a little bit hard to visualize, especially if you have never built products before or haven't been as involved in the brainstorming and the creativity, the creative process that comes with, building a product. So I'm going to tell you a story right now, which helped me better understand the concept of an MVP or minimum viable product, which is the very first concept you would need to learn if you're building a product. So I'm going to walk you through this to help you better understand the concept, and then I'm going to map the concept to, reality, like what does it mean in real life. So to help you understand what a minimum viable product is, I want you to visualize or imagine yourself for a minute standing, at the base of the mountain that you can see on the screen right now. And you see three trails in front of you. Um, you don't know much about the trails at the moment. The only thing that you know is the three trails, all of them are going to lead to the peak of the mountain. All of them have small villages in between where you're able to stop and take some rest. And they all have different lengths and different difficulty. Fortunately enough, you have a chance to talk to, campers and locals at base camp and ask them, try to dig a little bit more information to help you better understand the nature of the trails to make an informed decision on which one do you think you should take out of the three. So you ask them and to tell me a little bit more about all the trails. And here are the three trails that you can see in front of you. The first one is a very steep one that you can see on the left side, sorry, on the right side. It is very steep. To travel on this trail, you would need a lot of experience and a lot of expensive equipments and expertise to be able to climb such a steep trail. The second one is very flat, the one on the bottom left side. This one is super flat. So it's going to take you probably even years to be able to finish the entire trail and reach the peak of the mountain. And you know from experience that a lot of people have traveled and took this path, but most of them have never finished because it's taking them very long to see any meaningful progress. And the third one is the best one, is a hybrid one, where it's not so steep and it's not so, flat. So it's a good balance between both of them. Um, it's steep enough where hikers are always making progress, but it's also not so steep, so that you always need like a lot of expertise and expensive equipments and time investment to help you better climb the trail. Let me just admit someone. The problem that you have right now, after you learned more about the three trails, is you don't know which one is which. You have a very dense forest in front of you, and you don't know like which one is trail 1 versus 2 or 3. So how are you going to go about this? So you think about it a little bit and noodle on the question when you suddenly think, okay, why don't I just choose anyone and spend some time taking the trail? And given that I know that there are multiple villages on the way, I will just stop by the first village. And I'm going to make some serious effort to talk to everyone at the village, anyone that I see in the village or a hiker coming up or down, to get more information on the trail. Maybe I can even find, like someone who have already taken the trail before who can, further elaborate on which trail it is. And the worst case scenario, I discover I'm on the wrong trail. I can just always go back and, back a little bit and take a different one. I didn't lose a lot of time because I didn't take the entire trail. I only took like the first few, per se, miles in the trail. So the nugget here is that you wouldn't have to make a commitment right now. You can always take an incremental approach. Take the first one before tiring yourself up, stop by the first village, and then make a decision if you think this is the right one after gathering more information. So the story that I just shared with you right now, it represents the entire product journey. The peak of the mountain is what we call your product vision. This is where the product has all the features that you ever want to build and that your customers are going to love. This is like the ideal state. Each trail is a product roadmap. So You remember we have been trying to choose between 3 different trails. Those all represent different passes, different roadmaps. All of them can lead you to the ideal state, which is your vision. Each village is a product increment. You can think about it as a product release. And the very first village that you stopped by that helped you make the decision on if you are on the right or wrong path and if you should go back and try a different trail, this is what we call a minimum viable product. This is the very first product that will give you the slightest signal that you're in the right direction or not. So this is kind of in a nutshell what a product journey looks like, how to help you reach the product vision, and how different roadmaps or different ways will help you through releasing incremental releases will help you figure out and reach your final vision at the end. I'll stop here for a second and ask you if you have any questions. Okay, if not, I'm gonna go ahead. So if I ask you right now again, tell me what's a minimum viable product? Minimal or minimum stands for, the bare bone foundation for any possible solution. Viable because it's sufficient enough, not for everyone to use the product, but at least for a subset of people, what we usually call early adopters, to use the product. So with the minimum viable product, you're not targeting all the customers. You're targeting a subset of customers who are interested in learning and trying out new technologies that might, not work out from the get-go, have its own quirks, but they really, want to give it a try because they believe that it's solving a pain point for them. And it's a product because it's something that's tangible that customers can actually try. The second component I want to cover here is how will I decide what I'm going to build? So it's more around the mental model that you use. Product managers are more like scientists. They use an very in-depth experimentation framework. So you think of your product as an experiment. Every product release you are releasing, it's really an experiment, nothing but an experiment. The goal here is to test different hypotheses to help you validate or invalidate the assumptions that you made about the product, the market, the user, pricing, about everything. When you're launching a product, you usually define a lot of things, and we define this sometimes with different frameworks like the business model canvas per se, where you further elaborate on the persona or the user. You have a good understanding or define the market. You define the revenue model. You define a lot of different aspects within the product. All of those aspects within the product you can test. You can follow the same mental model to help you test and iterate to figure out like the optimal case for you. So let's say I'm launching a product and I think customers should pay, I don't know, $20 for it monthly subscription, right? I'm going to make a hypothesis that, I think this is the ideal price. I'm going to launch it and then see customer adoption. And then it's like running a sensitivity analysis where let's say I can choose a subset of users and assuming let's say for the same market, ask them to pay $20. Other users ask them to pay $30. Other users, I'm going to ask them to pay $10 and figure out the ideal willingness to pay for my customers based on the user adoption when they are presented with different options to pay for the exact same service. This is a very known model used everywhere. Even if you shop for groceries at Costco per se, sometimes you go during the week and you see the price for the same item is significantly different, even if it's not on discount. They're probably running one of those studies to help them better assess what is the ideal, the optimal price that is not going to drive demand, that's going to drive demand high. But the volume of customers will still be sufficient so that the overall revenue will be sustainable and would make sense. So that's exactly what we do in product management. We don't do anything different, the same mindset. So releasing iterative or incremental chunks of the product through releases help you get the feedback loop. And this is what I say, like the same example I said with Costco, getting feedback from your customers by launching an increment of the product to help you better understand what your customers are thinking. Is it really delivering the value that you thought beforehand that it will deliver? So we follow the simple 6 steps. The first one is the product discovery or the learn cycle. So you learn a little bit more about the product in order to make those hypotheses or assumptions, right? Once you, let's say, you think you have enough information that you can kick off the product discovery, um, and product discovery is usually a continuous process, so it doesn't end. Once you have done it, you just move to the next step. It's not like this, but you have enough information so that you can start making progress. You build certain hypotheses or assumptions, and then you define success metrics for those assumptions. So let's say, given the Costco example, I would say if 100,000 customers bought this product for $20, then I think $20 is the ideal price. This is a hypothesis. I defined a metric or a KPI, key performance indicator, to help me measure the success of the hypothesis, right? Because I need like quantitative metrics to help me figure out, am I successful or not? And I run an experiment, and I will discuss with you what I mean by an experiment here. I run an experiment to, let's say, an experiment in this instance will be, I'll choose one of the branches for Costco, uh, based on certain criteria, maybe the number of customers walking in and out, the number of products they have on shelves, and so on. And I'm gonna, let's say, go there, observe, sit for half a day and observe and count all the customers that purchase that same product. And maybe I will redo the experiment during a big time, like a weekend or a holiday, and I will do it during like regular hours as well, to also better understand the different variables within my experiment, such as, the time of the day per se, which might have a high impact on the purchase behavior for customers. So those are like simply like certain steps that I can, write down and say, okay, this is how am I going to go through, how am I going to go about this experiment? And then I have to define like a time frame for the experiment, right? You can't let an experiment run forever. So let's say I'm going to say, I'm going to do this for a full week. And I think a week is sufficient. And if I didn't give enough data points, like I didn't get, let's say that week, not many customers were shopping at the same time, I didn't get the order volume I expect, then I'm gonna stretch the experiment and let it run, let's say for 2-3 weeks instead. Once I conclude the experiment, I start measuring the success, like the success criteria or the metrics that I defined beforehand. So let's say how many customers actually purchased the product. What day did they purchase on? What was the price on that day? Was it 20, 30, or $10, right? And start like collecting and doing the analysis to help me come up with a decision. And then rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Every time I'm repeating, I'm not repeating the same exact experiment. I should eventually conclude something from the experiment, but in many cases, sometimes there's a lot of noise or noise in the data, like or the team wasn't able to like agree on the next steps. So we'll also discuss what happens in such cases. So the basic idea here is to run a few experiments and then ask yourself, did I learn anything from this? And does the team agree on the results, the interpretation of the results? If the answer is yes, great, I learned something. Now I can make the next decision. The next decision could be, releasing this feature or agreeing on a product price, releasing a feature to a specific market, or expanding into a new market, like whatever the decision could be. Sometimes the answer is simply no. And when it's no, that means that I might need to modify the experiment a little bit. Maybe we disagree on the interpretation. Maybe the experiment ran for too long or too little, that results weren't meaningful. And if anyone is like has a math background, we call this like statistical significant. The results didn't really yield a statistical significance, so the confidence in the results is pretty low. And this is the scientific methodology that we use to kind of help us better define if something is successful or not. We refer to this in many cases as A/B testing. If you're familiar with the term, if you're not, you can, search A/B testing and learn a little bit more to help you better understand how to quantify the results, how to say that if the results, have a high confidence level to help stakeholders and yourself and your team align on the next steps. Sometimes the experiment is simply like a stupid one. You're not really testing critical information or enough assumptions. And we're going to discuss this, what happened in this case as well. So I'll stop here for a second if anyone has any questions. Okay, if not, I'm going to move to the next step. So most product managers, founders, and entrepreneurs work endless hours to create the best version of the product that they could have before they launch anything to market. So this is exactly in the story that I just mentioned. It's like committing to an entire trail and traveling all the way until you run out of supplies and resources to even know that you are on the right path. And this is the big mistake that many startups do. And big organizations as well, like teams within big organizations also go through the same mistake. At least 85 to 90% of companies and startups and teams would go through the same cycle. So it's really critical to better understand how to avoid, going down the same rabbit hole that a lot of other companies and teams would go through. Eric Rice, which is like the digital prophet of product management. He's the one that you can see on the screen right now. He is the author of The Lean Startup and many other books in product management. Then The Lean Startup is more like the Bible in product management. So if you have a chance, please read this book. It's amazing. So I tried to summarize his theory in like very simple words. So this is kind of the one-line summary of the entire book. So the entire book helps us define the principles to stay lean and start really small and keep going. If you don't start small, you would probably, as I said, run out of resources and you won't be able to keep going. So this is why we also need to, adapt to having a lean mindset to help us iterate and go through this entire process. What you want to do is to create the MVP that is essentially the smallest and simplest version of your product to only begin the process of learning. There are three building blocks when you are building this experiment, right, or this MVP. The first one is the hypothesis or the assumption itself, and the second one is the metrics or different metrics that you are building, and the third one is the experiment. So I'm going to walk you through the three steps or components and discuss it a little bit further with you so that you better understand what I mean when I say hypothesis or a metric, what is defined as a good one or a bad one. So for a hypothesis, hypothesis is what I want to test. It is the assumption itself. You need your hypothesis to be a little bit risky because that means that you are getting valuable learnings. A good lean product experiment will invalidate the hypothesis more than half the time. If your hypotheses are always valid, that means you're not really testing risky assumptions, and probably this full exercise is more BS. So that's why you need it to be risky and challenging, daring a little bit, right? The hypothesis could be about anything. It could be about your user, right? So let's say, for instance, I am building, last time in our product management class, I presented a case study that I went through when I was interviewing for a dating company. And in that case study, when I was presenting the MVP, I always start with the assumption that why would people even wanna use this, right? So I give them an option within an existing social media platform in an anonymous or private way to indicate that they're willing to, experience dating within the social space. And without building anything, this is like the early pre-validation. Without building anything, I just want the customer to click on something and say, yes, I'm willing to, be part of the dating experience on that platform. Only this helped me validate if there is customer adoption before I even start, right? Without building anything, without building any experience for them. And you will find that this actually is very common in product management. In this case, I also split my customers into different categories. So let's say customers who are actively looking for relationships, customers who are casually looking for relationships, customers who are not looking for relationships at all, right? And I made a hypothesis that, let's say, 40% will lie within actively looking, 30% might lie within, casual looking, and the rest will lie within I'm not looking for anything, right? By simply releasing this small feature that might not take like an hour from an engineer to build, it helped me also validate the definition of the customer who's actively looking, passively looking, and not looking at all. Um, so in this case, the example I mentioned right now is user validation, right? I did a hypothesis on our users to help me better understand, am I targeting the right user, right? There are also tons of assumptions and hypotheses that you can build for your product itself. The same goes for pricing. The same goes for the market itself. So as you're doing market analysis, you might need to build some hypotheses to validate, some of the core assumptions that you're going to build your product upon, that really requires, validation early on. Your hypothesis should be a very clear statement that indicates a relationship with your persona, meaning that a hypothesis can be vague. It needs to be descriptive. I need to say who is the target user that should be, that I am building this hypothesis for. So for instance, a good hypothesis, as you can see on the screen here, is if we add, a soccer photo to our landing page experience, it's going to convey trust to athletic Alvin, and he's going to sign up. Athletic Alvin in this case is the persona. If you are within a team of product and engineers and designer, everyone know who Alvin is, right? Alvin could be the inactive in my previous example. It could be like the inactively looking user, or could be the passive user. Um, so we usually also give the persona or the user a name to help us relate with the persona and help all of us know, like instead of me describing who's like Alvin is the person who likes this and doesn't like that, and you just say the name, everyone knows what you're talking about, right? And the second thing here is I mentioned a success metric, which is the sign-up rate. Although I could have been more descriptive and say that the sign-up rate can go up by X%, at least I mentioned a metric in here. A very bad hypothesis could be someone is going to sign up if we launch this specific landing page experience. I can guarantee you that even your 80 years old grandma or your 3 years old child could sign up for any landing page out there. If I build any landing page in a few minutes, someone is going to sign up for this landing page, right? It doesn't tell me any meaningful information because I didn't really specify. I didn't target a specific customer. I didn't have a metric in mind that I'm measuring the success against. And some of you could ask, like, how would I know, like, am I targeting the right customer when I'm building a hypothesis, right? This is sometimes where a lot of the targeting capabilities would come in place. So let's say, and I'm going to give you examples later in the slides. Let's say I can build a campaign on Facebook. And in Facebook, I have very detailed targeting criteria where I can target by the customer age, demographics, interests, and such to make sure that, whatever I define for Alvin, if he's someone between 20 and 30 years old who likes, who is interested in sport and gaming, who lives in specific location and so on, that those are the customers that I'm targeting with the promoted landing pages to help me better, measure the success of the hypothesis or validate or invalidate my hypothesis. Make sense? Any questions so far? Okay, I'm gonna move on. Experiments. So what's an experiment really? It's a very clear descriptions of the steps you're gonna take to help you gather information on the success metrics that you defined. The steps could be simply anything like interview scripts, right? If I'm, let's say, making a hypothesis on my users, I can go and interview 20 users and ask them multiple questions, like a survey. And that could be my experiment. I can also build a wireframe, interactive wireframe, and ask users without building like any code behind the scene, and ask users to, try it out to help gather information. There are a lot of tools, websites, applications out there where you can do analysis like this. For instance, like user testing. If you Google user testing, you can sign up yourself to be a tester, like one of the audience of any experiment. You can also pay, minimum money, like let's say 10, 20 bucks, and you yourself set up an experiment or validation and ask for specific users. They will make sure that they're meeting the targeting criteria specified or the persona is specified, and help you, execute your experiment by asking the audience to execute it on your behalf, right? You want to make sure that your experiment is really short and time constrained. And time constraint is very critical. I want to make sure that, if let's say, acceptable time frame could be like 2 to 4 weeks. If an experiment is running less than 2 weeks or significantly more than 4 to 6 weeks, it's probably not going to yield any significant results because there are a lot of external factors that can play a role in it. So think about, let's say I'm running an experiment. I work for Amazon during the fourth quarter of the year, and I'm running an experiment when I'm launching a new product to help me understand, the customer adoption. How many customers could possibly buy this product? If I let the experiment run, let's say for 2 months, during those 2 months, I can guarantee you that there have been many sales events happening. There could be like Black Friday, Mother's Day, Father's Day, whatever, Easter holiday, any kind of event that might have an impact on the user behavior that I don't have a way of excluding it or even quantifying it, right? So this is why you want to make sure that it's controllable, it's time constrained, and if there are any kind of external factors that might impact the integrity of the experiment during that limited time frame. A bad experiment, there are also a lot of examples for bad experiments or ways to conduct experiments. Some companies do focus groups. It's very old methodology. Most companies don't do it anymore. So focus group is primarily like, bringing a group of users and asking them, the same questions. It's very prone to group thinking, misinterpretation, and leading questions as well. So usually you don't really get any meaningful results with focus groups. Audience, you want to make sure that you're not just asking your family and friends. You want to make sure that the audience represent the external users for your application and they're not biased by any means to use your application or product, so that the results aren't skewed. Sample size, we usually say 20 plus. If you are a student, let's say running a small experiment, or an entrepreneur, you might not have access to like a huge sample size because it comes with a price cost as well. So nothing less than 5 is ever meaningful. I would say at least even 20 to help you make an informed decision. So the lesson learned here is you don't want a journey deep down in the wrong trail and then risk wasting all your supplies and resources. And I guess we're going to keep saying the same message again and again as we're building a product. Keep reminding ourselves of the runway that we have, especially if you're working within a small organization or startup where you always have to keep an eye on when the forest is going to burn down. So that's all about the three. Actually, I skipped one of the blocks. I discussed hypothesis and I discussed the experiments. Now I'm going to discuss metrics. So metrics is simply the thing I'm going to measure in order to validate or invalidate the hypothesis. The goal here is to find a metric that will help you make a decision on the next steps. So usually in the product community, we focus more on quantitative metrics. Sometimes we use qualitative metrics as well, but not as much. Um, Good metrics needs to be actionable metrics. So for instance, some of the good metrics could be like, the number of clicks, click-through rate, or how many people confirmed an order, or such metrics. Some of the bad metrics we also refer to as vanity metrics. So some of the vanity metrics that really doesn't help you make a decision is like downloads per se. Let's say I build an application, it's available on the Google App Store. If my success metric is how many people downloaded the application, this is BS. Why? Because like a lot of us download tons of applications that we never use, right? So it shouldn't be about downloads. It should be more about customer adoption and usage, right? You can make your success metric how many people created their first account or registered, right? Not just downloaded an app. Um, so you can see here multiple examples for vanity or bad metrics. It doesn't really help you make a decision. So why do those metrics exist? And even as a product manager working at many companies, you will come across, stakeholders who really want to focus on some of the vanity, useless metrics. In many cases, it's more for stakeholders. Like, let's say you're at a startup, a founder, and you're trying to get funding, right? You kind of use some of those vanity metrics to, I wouldn't say falsely, but to some degree falsely, um, communicate a message that your product is making it out in the world. It's successful when it's not really. So instead of focusing on metrics that make sense, you go and show your stakeholders and investors, see how many people downloaded my product. It's amazing. A good investor would ask you more questions and, figure out that, you might not be focused on the right metrics to start with. So this is really critical when you're a product manager. You don't want to be in a space where your stakeholders and the people who bring fund to your product are doubting you because of the choice of metrics that you're building your success on. Any questions so far before I move to the next step? Okay, I'll move on. How will you validate an MVP? Now we build a product. We worked through the hypotheses, the experiments, we defined them. How would I do the validation? So there are a lot of different ways of doing validation. If you read like in some of the product management books like the Lean Startup, you might find like 10 plus ways, common ways of doing validation. I'm going to highlight the top 3 ones that are very helpful, just, for the sake of time. I mentioned earlier, I talked about A/B testing with like the sensitivity analysis example with Costco. So this is an example of A/B testing. Now I'm going to focus on smoke selling, product demo video, and concierge method. So the first one is smoke selling. As the title says, you're selling smoke. So it's primarily, what does smoke selling really mean? It's primarily a one-page landing page that describes the product and requests visitors to sign up for a mailing list. So the product does not exist yet. You're just trying to represent the vision of your product and what your product is going to do through like a digital landing page. That landing page is like a website, like just a one page. There are many tools out there to help you create a landing page in a few minutes. One tool very common is called Unbounce. You can Google it as well. So you could create just one page that tells people like, here is our product. Here's everything about our product. It's going to have this and this and that, right? But it does not exist yet. Like you haven't built anything. And if people are interested, they will have like a call to action on the website. They can click on something and it would tell them, this is coming soon. Sign up for the mailing list to get notified when the product is available, right? This is a great way to also get like free early adapters and early users mailing list, because you're going to use this mailing list in the early testing phases, like alpha and beta testing for your product. You have already kind of, had a lineup of people interested in your product or service. You can also validate multiple hypotheses by changing the product or feature description. So let's say I create two different landing pages for the same product. In one of them, I explain my feature a little bit different than the other, right? And I have a hypothesis here that the first one, let's say the first landing page A, um, is going to make more sense to customers, to Alvin, if Alvin is like 20 to 30 years old. But if Alvin is more mid-age, let's say 35 to 45 years old, he might be more interested in version 2, right? So I'm going to create the landing page, target different sub-personas of Alvin based on the age, and see like which one resonates more with the user. The success metric in this case is the sign-up conversion rate. In general, across all industries, a good conversion rate is around 3%, sometimes 2 to 3%. Certain industries, it might, like a good one might be even like 0.6, 0.7%. Other industries, it could be 5%, 5, 6%. So it's really based on the industry you are within. So, if you're a product manager, you will be familiar with those metrics and the acceptable benchmark or baseline. But on average, close to 3%. What is your MVP in here? Your MVP is really your ad, your advertisement. And I keep saying the ad here because that's a way of, how are you going to reach users, right? Like if you're not doing it physically, like you're not walking to a store and asking people to like, come try my product. Like you might see if you're like walking in Costco per se, you need like a way to reach users online. So that's usually would be so like promoted landing pages, like you have, like you pay a little bit behind the scene to get more users to see the landing page and compete. So the higher the click-through rate and the more email addresses you're going to collect, the stronger your hypothesis is. Some like an example for the experiment itself, like the steps of a smoke test exercise could be, you will define a fake product, and I'm going to show you like one that I did. You define a fake product. Let's say I'm going to define a time machine travel car. And then here are my steps, 4 steps. The first one is I'm going to set up a Facebook campaign targeting early adopters. And I'm going to put $100 behind the campaign to see how many people, to start measuring the click-through rate, right? How many people are going to click on my ad. And I'm going to build a simple landing page experience so that when someone click, they will get directed or landed on that specific web page or landing page. And then I'm going to start measuring how many people, click through the landing page or show purchase interest. And they can show purchase interest by, navigating through different tabs on the landing page and such. So this is a quick example here. So you can see here, this is the landing page. It's like 2 sub pages. This is the first one just describing, oh, see how cool this car is. Click here for pricing and to book now, right? Someone clicks here, this is the pop-up that they will see. I'm displaying 3 different prices with the option to buy now. And then it says, oh, sorry, this isn't available. It's going to come in December. Give me your email. You're going to get notified in December. So here I am testing not only the product itself, but I'm also introducing some price testing into the equation as well to better understand, like to start seeing like which one, our most users are going to click on the first one or the third one and, do some analysis to help me make a decision. Make sense? Any questions so far? Okay. Next one, product demo. Very helpful way as well to do validation. And instead of like creating a landing page, you can simply create a video of your product. That doesn't mean that your product has to exist. Let's say if you are a designer or if you want to learn a little bit more about digital design, You can use multiple tools like Balsamic per se or Sketch or whatever tool any designer could use to build what we call interactive wireframes. So interactive wireframes are like a user interface where you can click and take actions. It's actionable. You click on somewhere and be directed to like different pages without any code behind the scenes. So it's codeless. Anyone can spend a few hours and learn how to create one of those interactive wireframes. So you are not really building much. You're building, like in most cases, an interactive wireframe. The success metric here is also like how many people viewed your video, or maybe sometimes instead of views, we say 2 minute view, let's say, or like a specific, to make sure that people actually didn't just click and say, oh, like bounce back, or, didn't actually watch the video, to make it less vanity metric. The video in this case is your MVP. A great example, like the best company in history that have done this is Dropbox. So when Dropbox launched like more than 10 years ago, before they launched, their CEO, Drew Houston, he made a simple 3-minute demonstration of the technology, and it was targeted for a community of early adopters. And he uploaded this on, I believe, YouTube. If you go on YouTube and write down Dropbox like first like MVP video, if you pay very close attention, you will start to notice that files have some jokes in their names, and you'll clearly see that it's targeted for the tech community, kind of early adopters who would understand all those memes. um, he launched this at night, and he said that it drove hundreds of thousands of people to the website. He said that our waiting list went from 5,000 people to 75,000 people overnight. And this was the reason they were able to get funding and become the Dropbox that today. Was all because of the early validation they did through the product video that they uploaded, which one can say was mostly like interactive wireframes. There might have been any minor things behind the scene. So I can share this with you in the chat here. You can watch it later. I don't think we have enough time to watch the video. Okay. I'll go back here. The third one here is the concierge method. This is very common in the service-based industries. So this method is a simulation of a product that's manually like a manual process without any automation or product development in place. I'll give you an example to help you better understand it. So that Zappos, I don't know if you know Zappos. So Zappos was a company, I think, early like 2010. They were acquired by Amazon a couple years, 2-3 years after they started. And Zappos was a great company in East Europe, I believe, and they sell shoes online. Back then, selling like clothing and shoes and purses online, like that market did not really exist, especially for shoes, and especially for women's shoes, right? Not kids' shoes, because women are so picky about their shoes, and shoes really need to fit you well. Like you can probably try, I don't know, 10, 20 shoes before you buy one. So Zappos came up with the idea that the hypothesis that women, mostly women, are willing to buy shoes online, especially from fancy brands and luxurious brands, the one that they don't have access to locally. So let's say I'm sitting here in Canada and they want to buy like an Italian shoes from Italy, right? I'm not going to go to Italy. I'm going to browse their website, and they see a shoe that I like. I place an order, they ship it and deliver it to me. And that was like more than 12 years ago. So it's a very risky hypothesis. When they wanted to validate this before building anything, they didn't build a product by any means. All what they did is physically, they sent team members from the team. It was a very small team at the time. So someone would go in Italy and walk by all the fancy shoe stores and take pictures and create like a catalog on the website by uploading those pictures manually. And when a customer, shows interest in a product that they want to purchase, there is no database that tracks all the orders or anything, just comes in a spreadsheet. And it says, oh, and you order from blah, blah, blah. Someone will physically go and walk. So they didn't build any relation with any retailers. Someone would go to that store and physically buy the shoes and send it to them. This was the validation for the MVP for them. They didn't have any software behind the scene, any databases, nothing. Just simply uploading pictures somewhere, and validating if people would actually buy shoes online. And it was a huge success. It was a huge success that within a couple of years, Amazon bought them. You can also look them up online. So the success metric in this case is the number of orders that people, placed. And the MVP in this essence is the manual steps executed. You can say the manual steps executed in order to, do the validation. So this is the third most successful way of doing validation for any product that you want to build as a product manager. I'll stop here. Can also take you to Zappos. So this is the website. You can go through it, and you can also place an order for Zappos on Amazon as well. I'll give you some time, the last 5 minutes, right on time for Q&A. So the floor is all yours. Any questions? Any feedback?
That was quite an insightful session. Thank you very much. Learned quite a lot.
Great. Happy to hear this from you, Tony. Okay. Any other feedback on the session? Any questions you might have, something that I didn't, you want me to dive a little bit deeper into? Another time, if we have another session, I'll go through the launch cycle. So what would you do after you build and validate the product, the steps that you might want to go through to go to market and successfully release a product to market. Okay,
Yes,
hopefully.
thank
Go
you
ahead.
for the class. It was very, it was nice to see how industries collide and how no matter what industry you're in, that there's still a lot of similarities when it comes to a product.
Yep, that is entirely true. As a product manager, like your skills are highly transferable between different industries. Also, like becoming a subject matter expert in a specific industry, which would usually take you like a few years to get there, is also like a much needed skill. You could probably materialize on that on being within the same industry, but just from, I guess, like reducing the effort that you would do or it will take you to do a lot of the product discovery, customer discovery, because you have been building products within the same space for quite a while. But yeah, totally transferable between different industries and very similar to what you would do even outside of the digital, like the digital products, even for physical products. If you think about like building a car, let's say Tesla is building a car or Toyota is building a car. If you read about some of the processes that they take, actually, like the lean approach actually came from manufacturing. It came from Toyota and their approach to try to reduce waste in the factory where they're building cars by simply stopping the entire assembly line before to debug any issues that they might have uncovered and force themselves to stop everything that they're doing and fixing the problem in hand to reduce future waste, even if it might come at the trade-off of like the metrics are going down for a short period of time. So they had a very long-term approach and amazing way of actually building cars. You can also read about it in the lean product startup book as well. Okay, if no more questions or no further feedback, I think we can end the meeting. Thanks everyone for spending the last hour attending this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yasmin.